Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 91 of this awesome, amazing Osu Let's Play series. In the last episode, I talked about beatmap nominators and also the nomination assessment team, those two groups of people that are responsible for the ranked category in this game. I explained how those groups work exactly. And in this episode, I want to talk about this idea of sort of hard resetting your playstyle, specifically when you have a really bad habit or if you just want a fresh start, that sort of thing. I will talk about my personal thoughts on sort of going through that process and when I think that process is most helpful to do, right? Like when you would actually want to do a hard reset. So, by the way, this topic was suggested in the comments from someone named Cristobal Lopez on episode 86. Thank you for your suggestion. And if you guys have suggestions for other topics, please leave them in the comments as well, because I do read all the comments on these videos. But yes, with that, before I get into the actual video, I'd like to shout out, as usual, that I live stream every single day over at twitch.tv. So that will be linked in the description. But if you want to hang out with me or watch me play this game live or ask me questions, anything like that, please stop by, say hello. And also, bonus points if you tell me that you came from this Let's Play series. I will be very happy to see you there. So, yes, I think, so just sort of to define it again, hard resetting, when you completely redo a habit of some sort. Let's say you tend to tap in a certain way, or I think a very practical example is like, let's say every time you tap and there's a stream, then you tend to tense up your fingers and they actually become very immobile. And you just have this constant habit and you're not really sure how to sort of break away from it. Because like maybe you didn't even realize you did that until like you actually tried to improve streams after playing for like 2 or 3 years, and you're like, oh my god, I just keep doing this like unconsciously and I didn't know how to fix it. So deep-rooted habits like those, I think okay, long story short, you need to obviously start from ground zero, but it's going to be a really slow process, and you basically need to go in like super slow motion and drill the ideal muscle memory that you actually want until it becomes unconscious, right? Basically, like the more you do something consciously, the easier it'll be to do unconsciously. And that's basically the idea for forming new habits, at least sort of the way that I understand it. And I think if you want a very clear way to sort of visualize or feel like what it feels like to hard reset, is try writing. Okay, so write something with your dominant hand and then try writing the same thing with your non-dominant hand. And it's a pretty popular type of practice or just sort of display for. Actually, I remember needing to do that in some like freshman college course on like, you get good at the things that you practice. So, just because you're not good at it now doesn't mean that you can't be good at it if you don't put in the practice, right? So, yes, anyway, I think that sort of feeling of like knowing exactly how it's supposed to go, but you literally just cannot. Oh shoot! Oops. Just for the life of you, you cannot get your non-dominant hand to write in the same way, right? And you just have to sort of mirror the ideal movement as much as possible. Try not to get lazy about it also, right? I think it's very common for people to like, I think that, okay, I guess this example of using your non-dominant hand to write is a very relatable example, but the concept applies to other stuff as well, and I'll sort of try to talk about that throughout this episode. But yeah, I think it's very natural to want to be still at the same speed of writing as your dominant hand. Or actually, okay, let me reword that. So you can write at a certain speed with your dominant hand, right? And so when you try using your non-dominant hand, then it's like there's a certain expectation in your head for like how quickly you should be able to write and have it still be legible. So you try to sort of match that speed as best you can, or basically just go as fast as possible, even if it means cutting a couple corners and like sort of skipping over some mistakes that you're like, oh, as I keep doing it, I'll get better at mistakes, so I don't think about it that much consciously. But actually, I think the sort of consciousness, deliberateness is what's really, really important for, especially for hard resetting a habit, because there is definitely a difference between trying to develop a new skill or the same skill but on a new hand versus redeveloping the same exact skill with like the same, you know, hand and everything. So let's say you're trying to relearn your tapping technique, for example, on Osu, the same hand and everything. If you gloss over like small mistakes, then you're probably going to end up reverting back to your old habit that you're trying to fix in the first place. Especially if you're very early into trying to hard reset your playstyle, then I think that's very, very likely to happen. So yeah, be very careful about that. So some general warnings, I guess, or I guess reassurance to those of you who are sort of in this boat. Probably you are if you have made it this far in the episode, but yeah, I think expect it to take a long time and expect to not get the same scores as you used to be able to with your old technique. Because you may have been able to, or you may have been able to get better scores with your old technique, but it's sort of like makeshift in a sense. It's kind of like, oh, okay, you know, like you're building like a giant house in Minecraft, okay, and you have all the scaffolding. You can get around to like all the different parts of the house, but only with scaffolding. And if you want to actually build the floors, it's going to take a lot of time and, you know, things like that. A lot of dedication to actually doing it right instead of just doing it quickly. But once you get that done, then you'll be in a... Oh, wait, is this map ending? Okay, yeah, nice map, nice map. Once you actually finish that process of doing it 100% the way that you ideally want it to be, then you will end up in a much more comfortable position, or like there's a lot more longevity associated with that, if that makes sense. As opposed to, obviously you can get around with scaffolding, but you can only get so far. And yeah, I think relating back to tapping technique, let's say you can stream up to like 200 BPM with your bad tapping technique, but like you have some really bad habits that you're trying to fix. With an ideal tapping technique, you might have like higher potential, but you're just not used to it, and you can't even stream like 160, 170 BPM yet with that tapping style. You can't stream as high of BPM, but if you get comfortable with that new tapping technique, then you're going to have a much higher potential. And I think sticking through that sort of training phase of hard resetting can be really, really hard. And honestly, if you are really demotivated, okay, I don't remember who it was. There's something called, was it like the quitting matrix or something? Okay, but basically, oh shoot, okay, don't blink when you play this game, guys. Okay, so basically, if something is too hard for you, then you have to decide, like, okay, if you're thinking of quitting, is it because, oh, let me see if I remember this. Is it because it's too hard for you, or is it because it's just not fun? And if it's too hard for you, then there's two options. Either, okay, so if it's too hard for you, then ask yourself this, okay? Is the challenge worth the potential reward? And then that will decide whether or not you quit. And then the other option is if it's just not fun for you. And if it's not fun for you, then ask yourself, is there a way to make this more fun or more enjoyable? And if the answer is no, then you also quit. And if the answer is yes, then I think it's like, is it? There was some other thing in the matrix. I'll put a link to it in the description. But that's basically the idea. Is what I'm trying to get out of that idea is just like, if it's very frustrating for you or is very difficult for you to power through, I think as long as you're reminding yourself of that potential reward that you're practicing for, which is, you know, to actually be able to maximize your skill cap potential in this game, then it's definitely worth sticking through, even if it's very challenging. And I mean, personally, I've had to do very similar things with my tapping technique over the last few months, because I was like, I gotta be able to stream, okay? But it's very hard, and I sort of went through a hard reset personally after like 6 or 7 years. I was like, you know, I've never been able to stream in this game. Well, kind of, but like a very makeshift way of tapping, and I was like, you know what, I gotta hard reset. Okay, ground zero. And what it looks like is a lot of experimenting with your tapping style and just the way that you move your fingers. And basically, also, if you want to hard reset your tapping style, I think the best way to do it is, yeah, seriously ground up. Like, start streaming from like 1 BPM, okay? Like, just get the very slow mechanical movement of the ideal feeling that you're trying to get out of your tapping style, and see if you can just emulate that as best you can. Try to aim for perfection, and then like perfection of the new technique, even if it's super slow. And then over time, you try to increase the speed while still having it be very slow. And obviously, I think there's like an understanding about this in the realm of fundamental versus skill cap to some extent, where doing it very slow but perfectly is sort of the fundamental training, and then doing it a little quickly but you make some mistakes but they're enough to learn from. I think that is sort of the skill cap understanding of training skill, or I guess hard resetting. So yeah, hopefully that gives a bit of insight, and I think aim and reading can also have their share of sort of hard resets. For aim, obviously, it's a somewhat similar concept because it's sort of technique focused. Let's see, I think hard resetting your grip, yeah, pretty much follows the same principles. I don't think there's really anything new to say there. But I think retraining the way that you read, that can be really tricky. I can't really think of any situations where you need to do that. I'm not sure if there's cases where you need to retrain your ability to read as much as you need to just like learn new styles of reading. But let's say, I don't know, I think it's just very focus oriented. Oh, look at this part, crazy. That part is really hard. Oh, man, I remember this map used to have like no double time FCs. Now it has like 20 or something, I don't know, but that part is deadly with DT. Anyway, yeah, improving your reading definitely takes a lot more focus, or like hard resetting your reading abilities takes a lot more focus for sure than your sort of physical movement hard resets, right? Like tapping and aim. And yeah, I don't know. I guess if you're really trying to hard reset your aim, then probably changing your skin can help a lot, because sometimes you get too used to like seeing a certain skin or like type of circle and then reading it in a certain way. So if you want to associate, like pick a new skin and then associate that skin with a new tapping style. Oh, nice lag. Nice. It's kind of like when you're trying to build a new habit. I think in basically environment plays a very big role in habit formation, and it's a very similar reason to why, okay, you know this idea of like having study desks, like study environments where like you have a desk, okay, first example, I think this is the one that usually people give, is getting in bed. Primary function for going to bed is for sleep, and if it's not for sleep, then you know what it is, right? So it's definitely not for studying. So if you get in bed trying to study, then your mind is going to go to one of those two modes. So that's sort of just what you've associated that environment with. And if you want to create an environment that sort of stimulates a certain activity or habit, then you want to create a new environment and associate that new environment with the good habit you're trying to build. So basically what I mean is studying, for example. This is a small tangent on studying, but I think it is kind of a little related, okay? But you make a new desk or get a new desk specifically for studying, and then every time you use that desk, you associate it with studying, right? And then every time you sit at that desk, then it'll be like, okay, yeah, study mode. Your brain is just like, okay, yeah, this is the study place. That's why going out of your house or to a library or something like that can actually be very helpful and productive for a lot of people. It's because it sort of creates a separation in your mind of the environment that you're in. Because, yeah, I remember when I was in high school, I used to always. Okay, let me just play a map. Okay, I'm gonna tell a story. This short map. Let's see. Okay. So when I was in high school, I would always go out to study. And my dad, I remember, did not understand the concept at all. He's like, why don't you study at home? And see, here's the thing about being at home is that there is a lot there to distract you. And if... Okay, so also, my computer was not in my bedroom. Also, so my computer was like across from the kitchen when I was in high school. So if I was like outside of my room, then I could just go to my computer, right? And computer is for playing OC, playing video games, okay? So this is my gaming out, hanging out with friends environment. And my room obviously is for sleeping. So being at home was like just made it really hard for me to actually sit down and focus. Unless I had like a strict deadline or something like that, and then I would just stay up all night and it's just a mess, right? Okay, so basically, if I go out to study, then it creates a completely separate environment. And that... Yeah, okay, so my idea with that... So the whole reason I went on that tangent was changing your skin to try changing your reading habits, because sort of having a new visual environment... And like, I mean, this is all theory, right? So, I mean, if you actually try this and you feel like reporting your progress to me, then definitely leave it in the comments or send me a message or something like that. I'd be very interested, but... Oh, look at this stream. Look at this long stream. Why am I over streaming? Oh, shoot. But anyway, yes. Quick little tangent at the end to those of you who decide to stick around all the way to the end. You guys are awesome. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this episode. Just some quick thoughts on hard resetting habits, things like that. Thank you all for making it to the end. Like I mentioned, if you have suggestions for episode topics, leave them in the comments. If you are watching in the future, please check out my channel, watch my other videos. And also, check out my Twitch streams. I stream every single day. You can come hang out with me. Things like that. But yes, with that, I'll see you guys next time.